This is where Angelina Jordan gains an advantage, because she is not trying to compete for attention. She is attracting it. And attraction is stronger than competition, because when someone feels drawn to a voice, they return to it, not because they're told to, but because they want to. This kind of engagement is not loud, but it is powerful. It builds slowly, but it lasts longer. And over time, it creates something that many commercial artists struggle to maintain. Consistency, not in output, but in connection. Now let's go even deeper into the structure behind this. There is something in the industry known as overexposure. When an artist appears too often, releases too frequently, stays constantly visible, the audience begins to lose sensitivity. The impact of each moment decreases. Everything starts to feel the same. But when an artist controls their visibility, something different happens. Each appearance feels important. Each performance feels intentional. Each release feels like an event. And events create attention. But more importantly, they create memory. This is one of the reasons why certain performances from Angelina Jordan are still widely shared years later. They were not just content, they were moments. And moments are what people remember. Now connect this back to the idea of commercial success. Commercial success often depends on frequency. More songs, more visibility, more presence. But artistic impact depends on intensity. Stronger emotion, deeper meaning, greater connection. Angelina Jordan seems to be choosing intensity over frequency. And that choice defines everything, because it shapes how the audience experiences her music, not as background noise, but as something worth paying attention to, something worth feeling, something worth remembering. And when music reaches that level, it stops being just entertainment. It becomes part of people's lives. And that is where the real difference is made. Because people do not build memories around trends. They build memories around feelings. And feelings are what her voice consistently delivers. Which brings us back to the core question of this entire story. Why would an artist refuse to be commercial? Because being commercial often requires compromise. Compromise in sound. Compromise in identity. Compromise in message. And not every artist is willing to make those compromises, especially when they are building something that is meant to last. Because lasting value cannot be rushed. It has to be protected, developed. She finds the emotion inside them, and then she brings that emotion out in her own way. This is not something that can be easily taught. It is something that comes from sensitivity, from awareness, from the ability to feel deeply. And when that ability is combined with musical talent, it creates something rare, something that stands out immediately. But even with that natural ability, there's another layer to her development. Exposure. The music she listened to, the artists she studied, the styles she absorbed. These all played a role in shaping her sound. Instead of focusing only on modern music, she connected with older influences. Artists like Billie Holiday, voices that carried emotion in a raw, unfiltered way. Voices that prioritized feeling over perfection. And when you grow up listening to that kind of music, you begin to understand it differently. You begin to value the story more than the sound. And that changes how you sing. It changes how you deliver each word. It changes how you approach each note. And most importantly, it changes how people hear you. Because when someone sings with intention, the listener can feel it. They may not be able to explain it, but they recognize it. And recognition creates connection. Now, as her journey continued, something else began to happen. The audience grew, not just in numbers, but in depth. Because the people who connected with her did not just watch once. They stayed. They followed her journey. They supported her growth. They shared her performances. And over time, that audience became something more than viewers. They became supporters. And supporters are different. They are patient. They are loyal. They are invested. They do not disappear when trends change. They remain. And that kind of audience is incredibly valuable because it creates stability. It creates consistency. It creates a foundation that an artist can build on for years. Now combine all of this. A powerful first moment, consistent performances, deep emotional connection, strong musical influences, a growing loyal audience. This is not just success. This is structure. And structure leads to something much bigger than a single moment. It leads to a career, but even that is not the final stage. Because beyond career, there is something else, something that only a few artists ever reach. Legacy. And legacy does not begin at the end. It begins in moments like that first performance. Moments where something real is revealed. Moments where people feel something they cannot forget. Moments that continue to live long after they are over. And that is what happened that day. It was not just a performance. It was the start of something that would continue to grow. Quietly, steadily, powerfully. And as long as that growth continues, that first moment will never fade. Because it was not just the beginning of a journey. It was the beginning of a story that people are still watching unfold. And the most important part, that story is still being written. And as that story continues to unfold, something even more important begins to take shape. Not just how people see her, but how people understand her. Because at the beginning, the reaction was simple. Surprise, curiosity, amazement. But over time, those reactions began to evolve. People were no longer just impressed. They were invested. They wanted to understand the person behind the voice. They wanted to know what made her different. And that shift from curiosity to interest is one of the most important transitions in any artist's journey. Because curiosity brings attention, but interest creates connection, and connection builds longevity. Now, as her performances continued, something else became noticeable. She was not trying to change who she was to match expectations. She was allowing her growth to happen naturally. And natural growth feels different. It is not forced. It is not rushed. It is not shaped by external pressure. It develops over time. And when an audience witnesses that kind of growth, they begin to feel like they are part of it. They don't just watch the artist. They grow with the artist. And that shared growth creates a deeper bond. Because now, every new performance is not just a performance. It is progress, a step forward, a continuation of something that started earlier. And this is where her journey becomes more than just music. It becomes a narrative, a story that people follow, a story that people care about, a story that people want to see continue. But every story faces a challenge. And in her case, that challenge is expectation. Because as the audience grows, so do the expectations. People begin to look for bigger moments, stronger performances, more visible success. And this is where many artists lose direction. They begin to chase expectations instead of following their own path. They adjust themselves to satisfy the audience. And in doing so, they lose the very thing that made the audience connect with them in the first place. But so far, Angelina Jordan has avoided that trap. She has not rushed to meet expectations. She has not tried to compete with noise. She has stayed grounded in what makes her unique. And that decision protects something very important. Authenticity. Authenticity is what gives her voice its power. It is what makes people believe what they are hearing. It is what makes her performances feel real. And once authenticity is lost, it is very difficult to regain. That is why protecting it matters. Now, let's look at something even deeper. Silence. Not silence as in absence, but silence as in space. In her performances, there is space. Space between notes. Space between words. Space between emotions. And that space allows the listener to feel. Most artists try to fill every moment. They sing continuously. They perform constantly. They push for attention. But Angelina Jordan does something different. She allows moments to breathe. And when music breathes, it becomes alive. This is a technique often found in older musical traditions. Artists like Ella Fitzgerald understood this deeply. They knew that what you don't sing can be just as powerful as what you do sing. And somehow, Angelina Jordan has developed that understanding naturally, which is why her performances feel so different. They are not crowded. They are open. They allow emotion to exist without forcing it. And that creates a very specific type of listening experience. One that is calm, focused, and deeply emotional. Now, As her audience continues to grow, another important factor comes into play. Time. Time is often misunderstood in the music industry. People think success must happen quickly. They believe that if something does not grow fast, it is not working. But some of the most powerful careers are built slowly, because slow growth allows for strong foundations. It allows for learning. It allows for development. It allows for control. And most importantly, it allows for identity to fully form. If an artist grows too fast, they often do not have time to understand who they are. They become shaped by the industry instead of shaping themselves. But when growth is steady, identity becomes clear, and clarity creates strength. This is why her slower, more controlled journey may actually be an advantage. Because she is not just growing in popularity, she is growing in understanding. Understanding of her voice, understanding of her music, understanding of her purpose. And purpose is what guides long-term success. Now, let's consider something else. Influence. Every artist, whether they realize it or not, influences others. But the level of influence depends on depth. Artists who follow trends influence very little, because trends change. But artists who create something unique influence much more, because uniqueness inspires others to explore. And Angelina Jordan is already showing signs of that influence. Not through loud impact, but through subtle inspiration. People listen to her and begin to appreciate a different style of music. They become curious about older sounds. They start to value emotion over performance. And that shift in listening behavior is powerful, because it changes how people experience music itself. Now, imagine that influence growing over time. Imagine more people discovering that style, more people connecting to that feeling. And suddenly, what started as one voice becomes part of a larger movement, a movement that values depth over noise, meaning over speed, connection over attention. And that is where her journey could lead, not just to success, but to impact, because success is measured in numbers, but impact is measured in change. Change in how people feel, change in how people listen, change in how people understand music. And that kind of impact lasts far longer than popularity, which brings us back to the beginning of this entire story. That one moment, that one performance, that one unexpected experience. At the time, it felt like something special. But now, looking back, it feels like something more. It feels like the start of a pattern of authenticity, a pattern of emotional connection, a pattern of steady growth. And patterns are important because they show direction, they show intention, they show where something is heading. And if this pattern continues, then the story we are watching is not just about a young singer. It is about the development of something rare, something meaningful, something that may continue to grow far beyond what anyone expected at the beginning. Because sometimes, the most important journeys do not reveal themselves all at once. They unfold slowly, step by step, moment by moment. And for Angelina Jordan, that journey is still unfolding. And the most powerful part of it may still be ahead. And as that possibility continues to grow, another important shift begins to happen. Not in the audience, not in the industry, but within the artist herself. Because every journey reaches a point where talent is no longer enough, where natural ability must be matched with awareness. Awareness of direction, awareness of purpose, awareness of identity. And this is one of the most critical stages in any artist development. It is the stage where they stop asking, "What can I do?" and start asking, "What do I want to say?" For Angelina Jordan, this stage is where her future truly begins to take shape. Because up to this point, much of what the world has seen has been interpretation. Her ability to take existing songs and transform them into something deeply emotional. But the next level of artistry requires something more. Kreation, creating music that comes directly from her own experience, her own thoughts, her own perspective. And this transition is not easy. Because when you interpret a song, You're working within a structure that already exists. But when you create something original, you're building that structure yourself. You are deciding what to say, how to say it, and why it matters. And that level of responsibility can be challenging.